Hi, I'm Doc Shaner, and today I'm going to be drawing Superman. When I'm doing these con sketches, I try to rough out as much of the entire page as I can right off the bat. I tend to find that if I don't, I leave off, or I crop the image weird, or don't leave room for the S, or in Superman's case specifically, but just trying to rough out the entire shape. Just make sure I leave enough room for everything. It's funny, at conventions, it kind of forces you to be loose. Certainly at home on a regular work day, if I'm not careful, I get awfully tight and waste a lot of time getting too particular about my pencils. But here at conventions, you just don't have that kind of time. You're trying to get a little bit to everybody, and just doesn't leave that kind of time for fussy penciling. So much of the way I see Superman comes from the tradition of Curt Swan and Jose Luis Garcia Lopez and even Ross Andru. But at the same time, I'm also influenced a lot by Jerry Ordway or John Bogdanove. So I try not to get too stuck in making him look classic. I want to make him look modern, and because the Man of Steel is a modern story. So I don't want to worry too much about making him look like the character from the 30s or the 60s or what have you. This is today's Clark Kent, today's Superman. I remember I would draw Superman all the time, and it never quite looked right to me. And one day it hit me that his neck needs to be huge. That's what makes him look like Superman. His neck is almost as wide as his head, and when he's in profile, his neck goes all the way back. So it's, he's big. He's meant to be built big and sturdy. That's part of what makes him look invincible. So just making him look thicker seemed to just key in for me for whatever reason. That looks like Superman. My first experience with Superman was the 50s George Reeves show. They used to show that on, I think it was Nick and Night, and I would watch that with my dad. I, for a long time, didn't really understand that Superman was a comic book character. Same with Batman and Spider-Man. I knew these as TV characters from cartoons or even movies. I grew up in the Burton Batman era, but even then, I thought of these as movie characters or TV characters. And it wasn't until I was, I think, 9 or 10, around the time of the death of Superman, that I realized he was a comic book character. And I made my first trip into a comic book shop to pick up, I think it was World Without a Superman, which was, everyone dealing with the after effects of Superman being gone. I'm doing the second issue of Man of Steel, so I actually have a lot of them, beginning or middle and parts of the story. I have a lot of Clark Kent in his daily life, in what is essentially the new status quo that Brian is setting forth with Man of Steel, leading into his Superman book. I have a lot of Clark at the Daily Planet with Perry and Jimmy and the rest of the bullpen. And just Clark, how he's learning what his life is going to be like right now. I have a fair bit of Superman too. I have a nice fight that I won't get too far into. But and we have a cameo from Green Lantern, which I'm happy to return to a little bit. That Green Lantern story, it was only one issue, but I had so much fun with it, and so many people, that's been what they remember from what I've done. it didn't hurt that I did it with Tom King, but it's just, and Green Lantern just seems to keep popping up in what I'm doing for DC, whether it's covers or issues or just cameos in other books, which is funny because Green Lantern was never a character I felt that strongly about it, but now I have this kind of fondness for him as something that's kind of followed me throughout my career at DC. I think I like drawing Clark and Superman equally. So much of one informs the other side of who he is as a character. And there's still so much that's iconic about Clark that I think stands up just as much as Superman does. I personally, I don't know where I would find any fun in drawing Bruce Wayne, personally, but Clark has so many nice little character moments, and the glasses, and he's always wearing the shirt and tie. There's a lot that you can work with Clark. In both penciling and inking, I think I tend to start with the nose or the eyebrows. Not always, but usually when it's a close-up on a face, I find that looking for the character starts with this section of the face, right here in the eyes, whether they're squinting or more open, whether the eyebrows are pulled down or up. So much of Clark Kent is trapped in the past when you draw him in the fedora and the round glasses. The easiest way to make Superman and Clark Kent look modern is to lean into Clark being a modern person. Especially because in Man of Steel, Superman's getting his trunks back and a lot of what that classic costume is. I tend to lean into the lantern-jawed Superman, but even then, trying to make him look like a real human, I think, is all you can do, and less of a cartoon character. And a lot of that comes down to expression. How does he react to things? I personally am glad the trunks are back. I have heard from a lot of folks who are not as happy, but that's fair, and it's nice to know that they care at least. It is very cool to be drawing him with the trunks again. The last time I drew Superman, it was an out-of-continuity series, Adventures of Superman, but he had the trunks in that one. I liked that by the time I got another chance to draw him, he was back in the trunks. It's so much of who he is, and I think you can't underestimate how much those trunks breaking up the space in his design, the importance of that. There have been some really great designs that have actually worked really well in the time since he had done away with the trunks, but having that red space down the middle is really helpful when you're defining Superman, both close up and in wide shots. It's invaluable. This is a Pentel pocket brush. I like using it for when I need those real brushy strokes or when I just need to fill in a lot of black areas. Especially here at conventions, it's a nice, smooth ink. Goes down really easy and dries really fast. Which is all important, especially here at a convention. It's also very convenient. All the ink is in here and you just have to squeeze it to come out, so makes everything so much easier. With my comic work for the last year or so, I've actually been working digitally. But even before that, I did ink my own work. I came from a newspaper background where we didn't necessarily have the penciler, inker, colorist line of work. Everything was done by me. So when I started doing comic books, that's just how I knew how to work. This is just a China marker. I like to use it on some sketches just to help define some of the values, especially with Superman's hair. The white spaces can become a little distracting to the overall image. So I like to throw just a little of this. Kind of helps set the hair back so it's not too glaring. And it helps soften some of the edges. I'm Doc Shaner. This is my drawing of Superman.